Oops. That's not good. Almost knocked my mic over. What's happening, family? Familia? Got anybody in here yet? How? For those of you who are in here, tell me how the audio is, because still working with the new mic. And it's on a stand, like a jerry-rig stand still. I have a mic stand on the way, because we just got our Patreon money, but... Little jammy to start the show. I'll continue in a sec. I just want to make sure that my Wi-Fi is plugged in. Forgot to do that pre-stream. How's everybody doing? I haven't seen anyone in the chat yet. Kind of unusual. I'm sure y'all will show up eventually here. Oops. Stop it. Stop doing that, computer. How's the audio? Someone let me know how it sounds. I'm going to just end up jumping right into the show if there aren't that many people here. It's about Yeonmi Park. I got a bunch of stuff set up for y'all. A whole bunch of stuff. So, should be excited doing that, Stream Deck. Why are you doing that? Why are you doing this to me, Stream Deck? I'm going to have to unplug you. That's not what we want. Whatever. Stream Deck's being weird. No Stream Deck for this stream. Sorry, I can't do any sound effects today. I set up a whole bunch of them. Sounds great? Good. Thank you. Thank you for letting me know, Joshua. Thank you. We got good sound today, so I can talk about Yeonmi Park and a whole bunch of research I've done on her recently. Because I've researched and studied Yeonmi Park. I mean, the North Korean defectors and the system that's in place to basically get defector testimonies and share them to the media. But I just did a deep dive into Yeonmi Park because once I started looking at it, I couldn't stop, I swear. Hello, Ides of Marks. Hello, Comrade Eddie. There's something going on with Twitch. Oh, is there? Well, that would explain the lack of viewers. Twitch it says I'm denied access to my own page. Okay. That's not good. So is this a problem with all of Twitch, or is this just... Because there is something going on with Twitch. It's very weird. Looking at my own Twitch account, it just doesn't look normal. It just looks like I can't see my profile picture. I can't go to my videos. It says I don't have permission to access this page, which obviously doesn't make sense. It's my own page. Yeah, it says you're not live on Twitch. Huh. So is there something going on with all of Twitch, or is it just the CIA targeting us? I feel like I'm not close enough to my microphone, but y'all can hear me good? If y'all can hear me good, then we're good, but this is so weird. What the heck? Guess I should have gone live on Twitter. I don't see anything in the news about Twitch. Battle State Games banned from Twitch. hot tub streamer banned from Twitch in 2023. Maybe they banned us. The audio's fine so far. Cool. Twitch is down on my end as well. Must be a server thing. Okay, that's good. That's good to know. Hey, Where Pilgrim, how's it going? The audio is fine so far. Cool, cool, cool. Did you see the DPRK documentary when they interviewed Yeonmi's neighbors when she lived there? No, but I have a whole bunch of stuff pulled up to talk about with Yeonmi. So I can, that would be interesting to see. I have a bunch of, we're going to cover today some of the interviews that they've done with people who, knew Yeonmi when she was in the DPRK and people who have exposed her for lying. But Twitch is glitching out. This is Papa Squats, by the way. Gotcha, Papa Squats. Thank you guys for letting me know. Hopefully that works itself out, and hopefully people find our stream over here on YouTube. I'm going to go ahead and share our stream on our YouTube stream on Twitter then, so people know that we're live on YouTube but not Twitch, and then we can go ahead and get started. Just got to find the stream so I can share it. Pause, share, copy, Twitter, live on YouTube right now, talking about Yeonmi Park, then U.S. sanctions on Twitch is glitching out at the moment. So join us on YouTube. Control V. Tweet. All right, we're good now. Now people know where to find us. The stream is perfect and is perfectly timed. I'm in English class and we're talking about reliable narrators. There you go. I'm a reliable narrator. I wouldn't lie to any of you. Hey, have you been a fan of the channel? Thank you for amazing content and interviews. You bet. Trying to do more interviews soon, including interviews with workers. So glad people are enjoying the interviews. All right. So should we start with Nicaragua or Yeonmi Park? What do people want to start with? Let's start with Nicaragua because that's what I was going to talk about last time. And then I didn't get around to it. So the Gray Zone published this article that I thought was really, really good, as is a lot of the Gray Zone stuff. U.S. sanctions and economic conditions drive Nicaraguan migration while Washington blames repression. So this is a really common tactic of the U.S. You see it all the time with Cuba. I'm going to talk about it in depth here with Venezuela because I'm writing a book on Venezuela, and a lot of my research is kind of not focused on this, but it's touched on this. The way that the U.S. basically sanctions a country, puts them under a siege, does everything they can to destroy their economy, and then when people leave, especially when people leave to the U.S., which is what always happens when a country is being colonized, is a lot of people migrate to the country colonizing them. The U.S. blames it on socialism. They blame it on the Sandinistas. They blame it on Ortega. Despite the fact that the Sandinistas and socialism in Nicaragua has been, combating poverty, creating these systems of rural welfare for the sort of peasant populations in Nicaragua, making sure they have healthcare and things like this. And of course, the U.S. is keeping incredibly stringent sanctions on Nicaragua, as they do with any country that tries to move towards socialism or even democracy. So what I wanted to talk about mostly was the way that this is being done in Venezuela and how it's, some of the stuff that I found with my research. If you want to know more about Nicaragua specifically, definitely check out this article. And I imagine some of the same tactics that they've done in Venezuela that I'm talking about in the book are some of the same things they've done in Nicaragua. But in Venezuela, well, not in Venezuela, but in like Colombia, which borders Venezuela, or Peru, or Brazil, or any other country in Latin America, the U.S. sets up these migrant settlement programs. Migrant settlement programs, which, they portray as like charity. USAID and all these other arms of the U.S. State Department are like, we're doing charity. Look, we're helping to settle migrants. We're helping to get migrants in these countries jobs and, giving them money to get settled. But what it essentially amounts to is a bribe for people to leave Venezuela. They'll especially have these migrant settlement programs targeted at engineers, targeted at skilled labor, skilled workers who are necessary to keeping the actual productive economy going, keeping the production of goods and services that Venezuelan people rely on to survive. Those workers who are necessary in that process, these migrant settlement programs funded by USAID will basically bribe them to leave. Come settle in Colombia and you'll have this job with a Western multinational making more money than you would in Venezuela. And then, of course, billionaires can donate to this. Oh, I donated to migrant settlement programs. Aren't I a good person? Get it as a tax write-off or whatever else. And what they're really doing is trying to do old school siege tactics on Venezuela. Starve them out with sanctions while getting all their skilled workers or productive workers to leave the country. So as I said, they've been doing these migrant settlement programs in Colombia as well as Peru and Brazil. So we were kind of talking earlier in a TikTok that I uploaded to YouTube, like the US has so many NGOs and so many arms of finance capital, like banks and whatever else all around the world in Latin America or whatever, that as soon as the US as soon as they start moving towards a more democratic system of governance, as soon as they start moving towards socialism, it's almost like imperialism happens automatically. Like these arms of the U.S. empire, these NGOs getting money from the NED, these apparatuses that serve Western finance capital, these banking apparatuses, immediately, start dumping funding into the opposition. Parties that are pro-U.S. start increasing political organization of those parties on the ground. USAID and these NGOs can kick up the amount of migrant settlement programs that they're doing in surrounding countries to try and lure skilled workers out of whatever country is trying to move towards socialism. So there's basically this. I think it shows that imperialism is the highest stage of capitalism, right? Imperialism isn't an action. Imperialism wasn't the Iraq War. The Iraq War was a horrific act of imperialism, one of the worst that we've seen in the last 20 years, along with Libya and Syria. But imperialism was the oil companies who were reliant on Iraqi oil. The oil companies who snapped into action when Saddam Hussein started trying to adjust oil quotas in a way that would be beneficial to Iraq, right? The ruling class of industrial and finance capitalists are reliant, their profits are reliant, their surplus value is reliant on exploiting other countries, super exploiting other countries, right? That is the system that's in place. So when other countries start trying to change the system, it hurts the profits, it hurts the surplus value of these finance capitalists, and they immediately snap into action. And they have so much infrastructure set up, the arms of finance capital reach so thoroughly all over the world, as do NGOs and the NED and all these arms of U.S. imperialism are already set up all around the world. So when the banks are angry, when the banks on Wall Street in London, who kind of centrally control the empire, are angry, these arms of finance capital and the NGOs that serve them can snap into action immediately without even really thinking about it. Which I did a TikTok on that, which I will play for you now. Whoops, people are telling me they can't hear the audio. Let me try resharing my screen. I might have forgot to click share system audio. All right, how about let me know in the chat.
A lot of the recent U.S.-backed color revolution and coup efforts in recent years is that the U.S. has so many NGOs, non-governmental organizations set up in other countries, as well as arms of Western finance capital like banks. And they control the IMF and World Bank, whose daily actions have a huge effect on the global economy. So when a left-wing socialistic leader takes power like Pedro Castillo in Peru, it's almost like imperialism starts happening automatically. Finance capitalists and oligarchs will almost instantly increase political spending, and the NGOs kick their political organizing into high gear, usually getting some money from the NED, the National Endowment for Democracy, which is basically a private version of the CIA. So in a lot of countries, the US has the political infrastructure set up to start destabilizing them immediately. It shows us how imperialism is not an action, it's not a verb, it's the stage of capitalism that we live in, the global system. What I've noticed.
I'm sorry I had that video muted right away. Y'all didn't even get to hear the Juice WRLD. I still see the IMF in my room. Can't forgive the loans that they gave you. I thought that was a good joke. I probably should have just said that in the video instead of, that's what the caption is. But either way, that's a TikTok basically saying what I meant there. Like the imperialism is a global system, so the infrastructure for overthrowing other countries and doing regime change is already set up and snaps into action. Somebody said that they feel like this is what's going on in Peru right now. Oh, thank you for the super chat. Or sorry, this is what's happening in Brazil right now, and they saw an article about it. Definitely. This is another great example. Headlines like this really underline the fact that capitalism is the enemy of democracy. It's from Alan McLeod of Mint Press News. And it's a Reuters article. Brazil markets fall after Lula takes office, vowing to end poverty. So immediately, because and this happens anytime a socialist or left-wing democratic pro-working class leader is elected, it affects the markets. The markets react. Meaning capital reacts. It reacts as, oh, they're going to end poverty. Ending poverty isn't good for us. And they snap into action and do whatever they can to starve out Brazil or whatever country is moving towards ending poverty. But this proves, that the system itself that we all live in is structured so that if a leader is by, for, and of the people and wants to fight for the people's economic interests, the most powerful people in the system are against it, and they have the power to immediately snap into action and try and put an end to it, try and put an end to the will of the people actually being carried out, which is hilarious because, the U.S. and all these other liberal democracies claim to be based on freedom, democracy, liberty, all these things that they can't live up to. Parenti pointed out, and thank you so much, Andrew Ray, for the super chat. $10 helps more than you know. So I just ordered a mic stand because my current mic is duct taped to. If you can see it, it's duct taped to a mic stand that doesn't fit it at all. So shout out to y'all for the super chats and the support on Patreon. You're the reason that we actually have equipment now. Parenti pointed out that Iraq wasn't about seizing their oil. It was about keeping Iraqi oil off the market. Looking up Iraqi crude oil export shows a massive dip during the war. That's interesting, and I would agree because, like I said, the U.S., like the CIA, helped put Saddam in power. Right? The CIA backed Saddam because he thought he was going to be pro-U.S. And Iraq's oil was nationalized, but Western corporations, still had decent access to it because they had a leader who they supported, who was in power, who was selling them the oil fairly cheaply or was letting them have access to the oil for pretty cheap prices. What really prompted the war was when Saddam started trying to negotiate higher oil quotas. I'm sure there was pressure from within Iraq, pressure from the people, like, why aren't we using our oil for us? You know, the industry's nationalized, but we're allowing these U.S. corporations to have whatever they want. So he tried to adjust the oil quotas to have the U.S. multinationals pay Iraq more money for their oil, and they were met with warfare, Operation Shock and Awe. Me and my roommate were actually watching a bunch of the craziest videos from Iraq the other day, and I was showing him like the bombing campaign. You can see Operation Shock and Awe, and then we were watching their capture and kill, I believe, or kill and capture programs. So we were watching the U.S. military just fire on people with drones. And I was telling him how, you know, there were certain drone campaigns during the Obama administration that killed 90% civilians or not the intended targets. And we're watching these drone videos, and it literally looks like a video game. Oops, how'd that happen? I lost connection to my camera. The CIA doesn't want me talking about drones. There we go. So yeah, it's just crazy. The drones literally look like a video game, and we know, thanks to Mint Press News and Alan McLeod, partially, that the DoD spends a whole lot of money funding Call of Duty. You know, and the Army now has these like recruitment centers where they basically have kids playing video games. And they're like, this is what you could be doing for the military. And you know, the drone strikes themselves, you can't even see the people that you're firing on. A lot of times it's just people like walking in fields. It's like, are we sure these are terrorists? And of course, investigations into the U.S. drone programs have proved that we're pretty indiscriminate with who we'll fire them at. So you're kind of surprised you were not on the live of Syriana Analysis Channel 2. It just finished. It had fee on American journalists speak out against U.S. policy in Ukraine, and they don't like it. I wish I could have been on that. It sounds cool. Colonialism is the opposite of democracy. In a lot of ways, yes, it is. No sound, comrade. All good. Is it better now? Do we have the sound? The CIA disconnected your face cam for some reason. Those bastards. I think I accidentally just bumped my computer. But it's so much easier to just blame everything on the CIA, you know? You heard of Aaron Russo? He met with one of the Rockefellers and told him all about Iraq. No, I haven't heard of Aaron Russo. Sounds very interesting, though. You can hear me? Okay, good. Good. Getting a handful of people to join the stream now. What's up, everybody? So I'm glad I could cover the Nicaragua migration thing. I don't want to go too in depth. Like, I didn't bring up a lot of sources for the U.S. migrant settlement programs because that was a lot of unique research I had to do for my Venezuela book, which is now like 40 pages of sources and notes. I mean, the actual book, I've actually started writing it. It's probably like 20 pages deep. Then, you know, that's just touching on presenting, or I mean, that's just beginning to present all of the research and information that I've gathered for the book, which, like I said, is like 40 pages of stuff. I don't know if that's double or single spaced or what font, but a lot of research. The form of presentation, like sometimes I like doing it. Like I do like making TikToks and trying to simplify things for people. But when it comes to like a long form book, it can be a little bit tedious because you got to make sure you don't have any grammar errors and like everything flows nicely. But that's all I got to do now. Did you see the healthcare worker responding to your TikTok? I did not. Eddie's secret CIA agent confirmed. Definitely. AES is messy like that. Was there a healthcare worker mad about what I was saying? I'm curious. Speaking of books, reading Parentes to Kill a Nation. Woo! That's the #1 book I've been recommending people since the conflict or since Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Like, if you want to understand NATO expansionism and how violent and forced it has been, read To Kill a Nation, the attack on Yugoslavia. Because a lot of people think Yugoslavia just fell apart on their own without any U.S. involvement, which is so not true. No, the worker agreed with you. Oh, cool. I'll have to check that out. If someone could send it actually here, that would be lit. Liddy. Happy New Year, everyone. Happy New Year. Woo, it's 2023, the year that we established socialism in the United States. It is our year. So before I jump into the Yeonmi Park spiel, I wanted to make, I already talked about this on TikTok. I wanted to make sure people saw Carlos's new article, A Fraternal Hand, the American Tradition of Socialist Democracy and Chinese Socialism. This is such a cool article. Such a cool article that looking for the video. Awesome. Thank you. Thank you. This is Carlos basically talks about how China lives up to the ideals that the U.S. was founded on more than the U.S. does. You know, the life, liberty, pursuit of happiness. The U.S. doesn't protect any right to life. You know, it killed millions of people in Iraq. People die due to lack of health care, health insurance in our country every year. We have the opioid crisis killing 60,000 people. You know, and the corporations who purposefully lied about opioids to get people addicted and make a profit or make surplus value were never held accountable, even close. You know, the Sackler family, who was the main family of shareholders behind it, they're still one of the wealthiest families in the country. They've lost billions through lawsuits, but they're still worth like 11 to 13 billion dollars. So sorry, I'm ranting about the opioid crisis because I've done a lot of research on that for our new journal, which is coming out very soon. But Carlos says that China, through their poverty alleviation efforts and, you know, their efforts to serve their people, live up to these ideals of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness more than the U.S. does, as well as, you know, the idea that the U.S. government was going to be a government by, of, and for the people. You know, that was a pretty revolutionary idea at the time, but Karl Marx would say, well, you're never going to have a government that's by, for, and of the people so long as you have an economic system where the means of production and private property are owned by, you know, a small class of the bourgeoisie who don't work and only collect the surplus that's created by workers. And obviously that's what the U.S. has become, a completely undemocratic system. So then after Carlos lays that out, the way that China, you know, fulfills the ideals of the U.S. better than the U.S., he talks about figures like Jefferson or Martin Luther King or John Dewey. So some of the greatest thinkers in American history, American thinkers, and some of them who are considered to be foundational to, you know, our country and what it's supposed to be about, the theory that our government is based upon and that our whole nation is based upon. And he says that a lot of these thinkers basically said what I just said, that if you have a system like capitalism where the means of production are privately owned by this small class of people, you know, who exploit the working mass of society for surplus value, then you're never going to have a democracy. You're never going to have a system of by and for the people, right? All these thinkers were smart enough to understand that we need a different social system. We need a different economic system if we're going to have a government that truly protects the people and works for the people. And, you know, they said it in various different ways. They didn't say things, you know, in an explicitly Marxist fashion always. But if, like Thomas Jefferson, for instance, understood that the enormous inequality in property relations was the cause of the misery of the bulk of mankind. So he's talking about property relations. So no, he's not being explicitly Marxist, but he's getting about as close as you can, saying that property relations are the cause of misery for the bulk of mankind. Herbert Aptheker said the concentration of capital was the central threat to democratic rights. The interests of capital can turn a government of, by, and for the people into a government by, or of, by, and for big business. So even these foundational thinkers who a lot of conservatives think would support their ideology, you know, were basically pointing to the flaws in capitalism very, very early on, before capital really accumulated and concentrated and took complete control of the state, the government, like it has today after 40 years of neoliberalism and years of capital accumulation and development. So, hey, Eddie, I've tried searching on Twitch for Midwestern Mark's channel and nothing. Yeah, something's going on with Twitch. So, yeah, I'm not going to worry about it right now, though. Studying history is what got me here. Nice. Very cool. Yeah, if you actually study history and actually read thinkers, famous thinkers, what they had to say, you'll find it's often highly distorted, by the likes of PragerU or whoever else. These conservatives who tell you to study economics and study history so you understand why socialism is bad. And you actually study history and economics and you realize the opposite. So shout out to Carlos for that. I just thought it was really good. Really good article. Sounds like you've been banned on Twitch? No way. That's so sad. I put so much effort into growing our Twitch account. Oh, my channel's back up. From my perspective, it says that I'm live on Twitch and that we have one viewer. I don't know if it's me, but before it wasn't working. Now it appears to be. Let me see if I can get into my video. I still can't get into my videos to edit them. It says access denied, which is strange, but we'll figure it out. Don't want to worry about it now. Like I said, I just want to make a good show. Yeah, I had a video of a WikiLeaks helicopter attack pulled up, but maybe that's the kind of stuff that gets me banned. One of the things Julian Assange leaked. I should have played that earlier when we were talking about some of the most horrific clips to come out of Iraq and Afghanistan. But I'll play it another time when I'm less being attacked by Twitch less. I couldn't load your channel on Twitch, so I came to YouTube. Not good, not good. For what it's worth, I was able to see the stream on Twitch. See, I don't think I got banned. I don't. I think it would look different if I got banned. I think it would tell me. It looks glitchy. It looks like the server's messed up. All right, let's talk about Yeonmi Park. So Yeonmi Park is a North Korean defector, a celebrity defector who's gained a huge audience in the United States. And she's, of course, been propped up by many NGOs and think tanks, libertarian think tanks in the U.S. who pay her a lot of money to do these speaking engagements. So it's turned her into this sort of online celebrity. But even liberal sources, or even liberal outlets and liberal academics have poked holes in her stories, found contradictions, places where she's blatantly contradicted herself, places where her story literally couldn't be true. So, a lot of Western media lies about their enemy countries are based on truth or based on facts that are then just blown out of proportion to a crazy degree. Like the protests in China, anytime people are upset with their government at all in China, the U.S. media reports on it 24/7, and they act like the people in China are overthrowing their government. Right? The massive people in China are rising up against their horrible, oppressive, dictatorial government. When in reality, some people have critiques of their government and maybe they organized a protest, but it's nothing like what the U.S. makes it out to be. And then you have all these mainstream media pundits who, why are the Chinese people protesting? Well, me, as a liberal American pundit who takes a bunch of money from Western NGOs, I think that the Chinese people are overthrowing their government because their government imprisons everyone and tortures people for fun and kills all their puppies. And then Americans watch that like this. Interesting. It must be true. We're so lucky to live in the land of the free. But the main point I want to make is that, it's usually something that's kind of true, like the protest, then just blown out of proportion to the utmost degree by every outlet in Western media. But a lot of the stuff Yeonmi Park says is just made up. Right? Yeonmi Park seemingly just pulls things out of her butt, as do a lot of the North Korean defectors. And we're going to talk about why today. We, in our podcast with Derek Ford of the Liberation School, one of my favorite podcasts we've ever done, talking to someone who spent a ton of time in Korea, both in the north and south, studying their history, studying their current system, their economic system, and their system of governance. And he told us a lot of the stories that you hear about North Korean defectors or the terrors going on in North Korea. They'll be republished even by mainstream outlets like BBC in the US, or, less mainstream outlets, worse outlets even than the BBC or New York Times or whatever, like the Daily Beast or the New York Post. A lot of these stem from South Korean tabloids, like People Magazine, basically, of South Korea. And Derek told us when he would talk to South Koreans, they understood that stuff wasn't true, right? They understood the stuff like we understand in the US, like you have to take everything TMZ and People Magazine reports with a huge grain of salt, because they're just throwing anything they can to get clicks, and they have no real journalistic integrity. South Korean people understand that's what their tabloids are like, where a lot of these stories are originating. And they would ask Derek, like, do Americans really believe that? They really believe these stories, like all North Korean people have to have the same haircut as Kim Jong-un? Like, holy crap, I can't believe that. We all understand those aren't true. And what's funny was there was a story that everybody has to get the same haircut as Kim Jong-un, and a story that nobody can get the same haircut as Kim Jong-un. They came out within like a year of each other. Again, they originated from South Korean tabloids, but then were published in U.S. mainstream media. And there's a viral video now of two guys going to North Korea to get a haircut, and debunking this myth. It's not that viral, but it's pretty viral. And I mean, you even see them on the tabloids in the U.S. Like anytime you're checking out at the grocery store, a lot of time you're checking out at the grocery store, you see Kim Jong-un on People Magazine. Like, Kim Jong-un ate his people's puppies. And it's because, these outrageous stories work for clickbait, which is all the tabloids care about. So thank you, Ross, for the super chat. Whenever I see Amy Goodman gets behind a protest, I smell a rat. Yeah, Democracy Now! They are not what they used to be, are they? Not at all. But thank you, Ross. Ross is one of the most consistent supporters of Midwestern Marks, constantly sending us super chats and stuff. So glad you believe in our project enough to support us financially with your own hard-earned money, Ross. Appreciate you, and you almost always agree with your analysis, or I have every time I can think of a time where you've said something. Yeah. This is Democracy Now! I used to think they were a great anti-imperialist source, but I don't really read them anymore because, like you said, now they used to be. So the South Korean tabloids, profit off these stories about the DPRK. And a lot of these stories about the DPRK originate from those tabloids. But you also have a whole TV show called Now on My Way to Meet You. This is a South Korean TV show where they interview North Korean defectors. And, they come up, or, whether they're true or not, they tell the most outrageous stories about the DPRK. And there's actually a lot of competition for people to get on this show, because you get paid a lot of money, right? And you can become a celebrity like defector, like Yeonmi Park, and just go around telling stories for NGOs, whether true or not, or a stretch of the truth, and you make a lot of money. And the economic conditions in South Korea are not very good right now for the masses of people. The U.S. has done everything they can to prop them up, but they've done everything they can to prop up their capitalist class. It's not like they're taking care of the South Korean workers, as is exemplified by these great movies like Parasite and Squid Game that come out, basically criticizing capitalism. Like Squid Game is saying, people would rather risk their lives for money in this game than go back and live in the real world under capitalism. So that's it could almost be an analogy for this TV show. Right, defectors living in South Korea, in order to make money, are willing to say whatever they need to say about the DPRK. And a lot of people who talk on this show also are filtered in by the South Korean intelligence agency, which is, like, believe it or not, they're almost like worse than the CIA in terms of what they're willing to do. Maybe that's not true, but pretty bad. And that is discussed in depth in the film Loyal Citizens of Pyongyang, which was put out by the Liberation School. But because of all these factors, because of the sort of defector industry that exists in South Korea, defector stories haven't been taken seriously by academics for like 20 years at least. You can't quote you can't write an academic paper about North Korea and then quote like something a defector said on the TV show, "Now on my way to meet you." It just won't be taken seriously because we know, regardless of your thoughts on the DPRK, and I've said even a lot of liberals take this position now who don't like the DPRK, regardless of your thoughts on it, you can't take the defector stories, 100% serious at their face value. You have to understand, the motivations behind becoming a celebrity defector, the financial motivations, the amount of NGOs and intelligence agencies who prop up this defector industry. So yeah, if you want to know more about the defector industry, definitely check out Loyal Citizens of Pyongyang. They interview a couple defectors and go to Korea, and there's like a lawyer who works on behalf of defectors who were lied to, because there are these brokers in South Korea or China who try and find people in the DPRK thinking about leaving and say, we'll give you this much money and set you up with a good life if you leave. And then a lot of these people were lied to, right? They get the defector stories from these people and then pay them less than what they promised, or, don't set them up, or they lie to these people because a lot of people are in the DPRK where it's a different lifestyle. And, you do have your needs taken care of by the government ultimately, or the government will give you a job if you don't have one. Then they go into capitalism, this system where you have to fend for yourself completely, that they haven't grown up in, right? They don't really understand it. So there's a lot of defectors who are angry at the South Korean government and the intelligence agencies and the ruling class. So they're like lawyers representing them now who talk in the movie Loyal Citizens of Pyongyang about it. But today, the video that made me want to talk about Yeonmi Park, she's saying that Kim Jong-un gathered all of the artists in Pyongyang, a city of 2.8 million people. He got all the artistic ones and made them watch him shoot an orchestra conductor 90 times. What is the evidence for this? A singular South Korean paper that publishes daily. Dong Al Ilbo is the name of it. And they switched to being a more conservative, more clickbaity, tabloid-esque paper after their revenue and their finances got too low, which I thought was interesting. So I don't know if they're exactly a tabloid like People magazine, but definitely a conservative right-wing outlet who changed to start being a conservative right-wing outlet once their revenue levels got too low. And stories like this get clicks, right? Why would it not get clicks? A story about Kim Jong-un shooting an orchestra conductor 90 times in front of every single artist in the capital city of the DPRK. I mean, that's a crazy story. If that was true, it would definitely be worth knowing about. So, yeah, and then when we're talking about like the South Korean intelligence agencies that I was mentioning before, or the South Korean media and how it works, or just the South Korean government and state as a whole, and their economy as a whole, really, was basically created by the U.S. Right? The U.S. basically created SK by occupying Korea in the 1950s and directly overseeing their economic and political construction. Jimmy Carter himself said that the U.S. has done everything they can to starve North Korea, prevent North Korea from developing, while doing everything they can to develop South Korea. Like I said, develop the capitalist class of South Korea. Which, if you don't know, North Korea has had the most stringent sanction regime on any country ever, other than the U.S. sanctions on Cuba, for the last 70 years, since the U.S. destroyed their infrastructure with bombs and occupied half the country, which is now South Korea. The U.S. has kept brutal sanctions on them, trying to starve out their economy, basically old-fashioned siege tactics. So yeah, and Jimmy Carter admitted to that, which is also in the movie Loyal Citizens of Pyongyang. So their media outlets, their government, their intelligence agencies, their education system, they're all very pro-US. They're all very pro-US empire. They have to be. They, like I said, the US directly oversaw and basically created the development of SK. I shouldn't say created, because the labor of the South Korean workers, was what the US needed to exploit in order to develop this country. But all of their country's media apparatuses, government apparatuses, are very pro-US because they're reliant on the US and they were largely created by the US. So here's a Newsweek article where the story that Yeonmi Park is reading originated. So in this story, they couldn't even confirm the name of the like they did a little bit of research to make sure that this was a true story. And they couldn't even confirm the name of the conductor who was apparently shot 90 times. So this is a real quote from the article. Ju wrote, Ju was the author of the original article, JOO, in the South Korean paper that Newsweek is taking and, repeating this story. And then Yeonmi Park takes it from Newsweek and then repeats it on her YouTube channel, spreads it to millions of people. But they say Ju wrote that the man was the conductor from the ceremony and that his name was heard to be Hyun Woo Cho. Ju also wrote that he tried to verify the name online, but the only conductor with even a similarly sounding name that he could find was Hyun Ho Ryu, who was with the National Contribution Choir. When Ju wrote the article, he said he was still not sure if the executed person was named Hyun Ho Ryu or Hyun Woo Cho or something else. But it is certain that the conductor was publicly executed anyways. What do you mean it's certain? You don't give any evidence. There's no evidence in this article at all. And then when they tried to fact check it by saying, here's the conductor who was apparently killed by Kim Jong-un, they can't even find a conductor by that name. But then they say, oh, but it's sure that they were publicly executed. It's not sure. It's not sure. This is just journalistic malpractice. You're saying that you're sure the conductor was executed, but then you try and double check it. You try and do actual journalism by looking up conductors in North Korea who have this same name, and they don't exist. So that was pretty crazy. But then, of course, you have Yeonmi Park, who's not going to bring that up. She's not going to bring up that we couldn't, verify the name of the conductor who was killed. Yeonmi's just going to say this happened to her millions of followers and viewers or whatever else. And then Yeonmi saying that this happened and saying, you have to believe me. I'm from the DPRK. Why would I lie? That message is going to be boosted by the NGOs and the, arms of finance capital and the pro-corporate U.S. media who have given her this career, this job as a celebrity defector. And, Yeonmi Park hasn't been in Korea for years. She hasn't been in Korea since 2007. So I guess I get why you would want to hear her story, but I mean, why is she considered an expert on things that have happened in Korea since then, right? In 2020, don't you think the country has changed? But I mean, she started out making money telling her own story, right? This is what happened to me. But in order to keep this career as a celebrity defector going, she needs to comment on stories that happened after she left. So that's basically her job now, is just taking these tabloid-esque stories with little confirmed evidence from Korea and saying that they're true, as if she's, been living in Korea for the last 15 years when she hasn't. So yeah, let's check out this video now. I think I've talked enough for the time being.
Soldiers using a shovel to put and gather what was remaining after the execution and take them away. And then what he did was demanding every artist stand up and go closer and then take a look around of the site of the execution. So many of them were like fainting, peeing in their pants, and do you know what this does? When you see something like public
So this is what I mean sort of by why is she an expert on these issues? It's almost like she tells the stories like she's still in Korea. Like she's been living in Korea and she saw all these people who witnessed this execution. But like I said, she's been living in the US making tons and tons of money to do these YouTube videos and speaking engagements since she fled to China in 2007, but then South Korea in 2009 and the US in 2014. So she's been in the US doing this since 2014 after making a bunch of money in South Korea doing this. So it's not like she was a witness to this supposed atrocity.
execution once, you are traumatized for the rest of your life. Hi guys, welcome to my channel. My name is Yeonmi Park. I'm a North Korean defector human rights activist. So today I have a very important news to deliver. I still somehow do not get it. This is happening in this 21st century. And North Korea is somehow so forgotten from the rest of the humanity. You have no clue what is happening in the darkness. And there's just only this few news that we get out, and majorly from the border towns and in the capital. So
it's weird how they admit that, we don't really know what's going on in the DPRK. All we have are a few accounts, from South Korea or from defectors who, like I said, have often been brokered by South Korean intelligence agency. And in Loyal Citizens of Pyongyang, they, defectors accuse the South Korean intelligence agents of torturing them, right? Torturing insane stories out of them. So they say this is the only information we have about the DPRK, which isn't true, right? We did a podcast with Derek Ford, who spent a whole bunch of time in the DPRK and talked for 2 hours about their history and about their struggle and the nuances of their economy. There's another great movie called My Brothers and Sisters in the North that basically tries to show what everyday life for the workers is like in the DPRK and talks about their economy and their productive base. So it's not true that all we can get are defector testimonies and tabloid stories with no evidence like this. That's just what the US NGOs and people like your celebrity defectors prey upon or use to get clicks and money.
So the news that I got in recent days is that it's just heartbreaking. Kim Jong-un literally executed the main conductor from an orchestra for 90 times. After his execution, if you shoot somebody for 90 times, really especially these days, those bullets are so strong, a human gonna lose a shape. They are not even gonna look like a human. All is gonna left is just a lot of pieces of meat and bones on the ground.
So first of all, she laughed when she said there was meat and bones on the ground from people being executed. Which is weird, but someone said this NK Music slaps. That's what I was thinking when I was watching this. I'm like, this performance looks really cool. This work of art that they're going to detail or show clips from a little bit more in the future. It looks awesome.
And Kim Jong-un demanded the soldiers using a shovel to put and gather what was remaining after the execution and take them away. But during this public execution, Kim Jong-un ordered every single artist go demand watch this public execution. I will tell you why this man, the conductor, got executed. What could he have possibly done in this 21st century? They didn't get killed in that most cruel way.
And the story for why Kim Jong-un killed this guy, I don't even know where she got this story from because I couldn't find it in any of the sources about this. But this might be the most absurd part of the video.
This year, on February 16th, that was North Korea's one of the biggest holidays. That was when Kim Jong-il, the second Kim, was born, supposedly. So, and there was something new happened again. Kim Jong-un, his wife, Lee Seol-ju, who was disappeared for last 13 months, suddenly reappeared on that birthday. And then Kim Jong-un took her to visit his father's grave in the morning and afternoon, attending this performance by this orchestra.
Looks like they're loving it. Looks like they thought the performance and the music was as cool as we thought it was. Make sure to share, like, and comment on the stream if you want more people to know the truth about the DPRK, by the way.
It's called 나우나수 관현악단, and often we think it's like North Korea's girl group. But yeah, so this group is designated to have a performance in front of kings. And there's a huge orchestra and there's a main conductor. And the man who died was Do Hyunwoo. His name is Hyunwoo Jo, and he was the one who got killed. After each these performances with the Kim attending, North Koreans all have to do this gathering after and assess and analyze which part that Kim Jong-un liked the most, which part he didn't like the most, and learning and then try to get better. But in this time, sometimes Kim Jong-un personally says, oh, I liked this singer, maybe I like this part about the whole performance. This time, Kim Jong-un said, somehow he really liked, they did something new magic with the shadow magic. So they do some like a tricks.
This looks so cool. Again, I really want to see this performance or this play or this musical.
With the shadow. And North Korean artists were trying that for the first time this year. Somehow Kim Jong-un was very impressed by it. However, in this delivery of the meeting, in front of all artists, people were saying, okay, this is a part where the dear leader liked the most, so letting the people know, and there's some prize to get if you were liked by Kim. But this conductor said, I'm not even sure that wasn't a huge deal. Why would he compliment on such a thing? But it wasn't like he was standing up and telling everybody about that. He was just like more talking to his like close friend in the orchestra. And of course, this friend was a spy and reported.
Oh no, Kim had spies within the orchestra. So Kim said he liked the performance. He wasn't even critical. And this orchestra conductor didn't know why he liked that part of the performance. But he said that to who was actually a spy.
Reported on him. This is a tricky thing. This happened to actually my own mother. My mother, when Kim Il-sung died, the first Kim in 1994, I was like infant, few months old infant. My mom heard a rumor that the Kim Il-sung died not from exhaustion by working for the people. Like literally, North Koreans told me, the regime told us that Kim Il-sung died from exhaustion and hunger and starvation.
He probably did. It ain't easy throwing or overthrowing and protecting your country from not one, but two brutal colonial oppressors. Kim Il-sung had to overthrow the horrific, torturing, enslaving Japanese colonizers. And then the U.S. came in, killed 20% of their population. And the DPRK threw them out too. Now they still have their sovereignty, and the U.S. is pissed about it to this day. He probably did die from exhaustion. Also, this is the ever-changing story about Yeonmi Park's mom. Her story about her mom has like 5 different versions that she tells.
Because he was working so tirelessly for the people. But somebody told her that actually Kim died from heart attack, not from the exhaustion. So she told her best friend saying, can you believe there are such a people saying these kind of bad things about our dear leader? And then that lady reported on my mom. Luckily, my mom survived. However, this time in North Korean settings is like this. There are 3 people. I am watching this friend, but while I'm being a spy, I know that I'm being spied on by somebody else. So even if I'm being a nice person, not gonna report on this person gonna report on me. But if that person doesn't report on me, someone gotta report on them. So you are being spied and spying on somebody.
So did you catch that? There's a spy in almost every area of society. Her mom got spied upon. This orchestra conductor got spied upon. But North Korea is so evil. Kim Jong-un's so evil and authoritarian and oppressive that they have spies for the spies. So there's a spy also spying on the spy who's spying for Kim Jong-un. Like, how many damn spies are there in this country? And how does one man, Kim Jong-un, have time to meet with all of them? Like I said, the city of Pyongyang itself is 2.8 million people. How is Kim Jong-un finding the time to spy on each one of these people? I don't know how one man could do that. It just seems physically impossible, but I guess that's why his Kim Il-sung died of exhaustion. It's hard to spy on everybody and then also spy on the spies and keep this spy system going all the time without ever having the people get mad and overthrow you or demand a change.
This system creates complete distrust between people. We cannot even trust our own back in North Korea. So Yeonmi, he spoke to his friend about like he wasn't too impressed by the shadow magic, and he reported, and Kim Jong-un got so upset. So he said, gather every single artist in Pyongyang. And once they got gathered, he demanded to shoot him for 90 times. So each AK-47 gun has like 30 shots inside, and used it all. And every artist had to see from in front of their eyes. So there were times in 2013, there was a pleasure squad group that Kim Jong-il gifted to his son. But there were some rumors about that group was not being loyal, and they had some capitalistic sentiment in that group. So Kim Jong-un got so angry. But which that group was actually where Lee Seol-ji, his wife, is from. Other than that few people, and also these girls knew about the secrets of Lee Seol-ji before marrying Kim Jong-un. So that was also main excuse for Kim Jong-un to kill all of them. Anybody knew the past of Lee Seol-ji, that he wanted to be gone.
I don't understand the videos that they chose for this video. Every video clip of the DPRK, it's like Kim Jong-un laughing and smiling and applauding the people. And then it's like these cool musical performances. And then Yeonmi's like, and then Kim Jong-un killed all of them off camera. It's like, did he though? I feel like you're lying.
Few of them were even pregnant at the time. After gathering all these artists and killing more than 10 of them, after shooting them that many times, they don't even look like a human. And then what he did was demanding every artist stand up and go closer and then take a look around of the site of the execution. So many of them were like fainting, peeing in their pants. And do you know what this does? When you see something like public execution once, you are traumatized for the rest of your life.
I mean, that part's largely true. If you're a child and you see somebody die brutally in front of you, it's going to traumatize you for the rest of your life. So, you wonder why the people of the DPRK are so anti-American and are so hell-bent on maintaining their own sovereignty when the U.S. killed 20% of their population just 70 years ago. There are people still alive from that time. And these stories have been passed down from generations. That's one person in every family of 5 killed in the Korean War. Think of the trauma that created. Think of the families that destroyed. Mao Zedong's son was killed by a U.S. bomb. Right? This war ripped families apart. But, defectors and the U.S. empire and the U.S. media and the Western NGOs are only concerned with the trauma that may have occurred from this story that there's no real evidence for, right? They're not concerned about the trauma that came from the very real Korean War, where U.S. pilots themselves are the ones who told us they killed 20% of the population and demolished every single building in Pyongyang that's more than 1 story tall. But who cares about that trauma or any of the trauma from the U.S.'s murderous imperialist wars, from the Iraq War, the trauma that occurred from the slave market that NATO brought back to Libya, or the trauma in Syria, where I actually know people who have spent time over there and come back with PTSD and not gotten taken care of by the U.S., or Vietnam, or the trauma that happens from school shootings in the U.S. every day. We're not concerned about this. We're concerned about potential trauma that may have occurred, like I said, in a story published by a tabloid with no evidence, because it's the U.S. enemy state. And we can never look inward and criticize ourselves. It's all about how evil are these other countries? How horrific is every other country but us?
There's no going back. Once you see something like that, there's no turning back ever in human psychology. But this artist, it's not like they only get to see this once. They see it so often. And imagine in their horror, they are gonna be terrified to death. And the only thing they remember at the point is like, I will be obedient as much as I can, so I will never die like that. And
Yeah, that's why the people support their sovereignty. That's why they don't want the U.S. empire or the Japanese colonizers to take them over again. Not because of the generational trauma that was induced because of torture and slavery and the mass bombing campaigns that killed everyone and wiped out every church in North Korea, which was previously called the Jerusalem of the East because it had so many Christian churches, but they were all destroyed by U.S. bombs. That's not the trauma passed down through generations that makes it so Koreans don't want U.S. involvement and they want to have their own system of governance and their own economy. It's because they're all just so controlled by Kim Jong-un. It's because Kim Jong-un has a spy within every family in the country, and then he has someone spying on them, and someone spying on them, and someone spying on them. Hell, he even has someone spying on himself, and a spy to spy on that person. That's why people in the DPRK think how they do. They don't have autonomy. They don't have agency. They aren't intelligent people who understand their history and the legacy of colonialism in their country. They're just all spied on by Kim Jong-un. He decides what everybody in the country thinks. Like, this is absurd and ridiculous. And Yeonmi's talking about trauma, which it's a good point. If you want to bring up trauma, let's talk about the generational trauma that occurs when you kill 20% of a country's population and then leave them under sanctions and occupy another or half of their country for the next 70 years.
That is a thing. That's what Kim Jong-un is doing now. And why would he always persecuting artists in a brutal way is also that he thinks somehow artists is more open-minded. They are more prone to corrupt in their ideology. So if for normal, like general population, we do think called like self-criticism sessions once a week. But for artists, once even 2 days. That's how Kim Jong-un makes sure the artists, their minds, doesn't get corrupt. And their anti-ideology of lifting the party and the revolution.
So he forces them to criticize themselves and hear from the people if they're going to make money as an artist. It has to be art that benefits the people, and they got to remain critical of it. That sounds cool, especially when you look at the system of art in the U.S., where anytime a movie in Hollywood uses a military outfit or anything related to the U.S. military, the Pentagon gets a lot of control over how the U.S. is portrayed, how the military is portrayed. They get to alter the movie. Or where you have the DOD and the Pentagon basically creating themselves these movies like Top Gun Maverick. We're funneling all this money into the Marvel movies, which gives this idea of, there are bad guys, there are evil, bad comic book villains like Kim Jong-un, and then there are good guys who got to take them out, like Tony Stark, the weapons manufacturer, and all us good Western U.S. or the military industrial complex in the US. Those are the good guys. There's so much, not only just control of Hollywood by wealthy studios who are looking to make as much as they can in the market, which is true, and that has a bunch of horrible effects on the artwork that we get. But you also have huge Pentagon, DOD, imperialist control over the production of movies, because they want to control the production of any and all information. And they know that all Americans pretty much watch movies and TV shows, so why wouldn't they try and control that? You know, having celebrities and artists who are loyal to the people and who are criticized by the people sounds pretty awesome to me.
Evolution, and Kim is like always on that point. This is unbelievable. There's nothing we can do to stop this kind of inhumane public execution in North Korea. But I think all I can do right now is be the voice for the voiceless. And I really hope you guys use your voice, use your platform to raise awareness about my people. So somehow international community gonna understand how grim the human rights situations in North Korea is, and come up with a better policy and convincing China to stop sponsoring this dictatorship in North Korea. So please share this video, guys. Hit that like button and let everybody know what's happening to my people.
Please, everyone, use your platform to share this. And now, not only does she want you to use your platform to share this story that she gave no real sources for, no real evidence for, and if you dig into it like we did before I played the video, there is no real evidence for. And if you try and fact check it, you know, it even shows contradictions or holes in the story. There was no conductor by this name in all of Korea who was apparently killed. You know, but just take Yeonmi's video and share it. Share it on your platforms if you want to be a good person. So they weaponize your compassion, right? They have her tell you the most heinous stories you can think of. You know, she doesn't talk about evidence for them, of course, but she tells these horrific stories that pull on your heartstrings and make you feel bad. And just share it on your platform. Share it on your platform. And you know, target it at China. Share it on your platform, and, you know, also share negative sentiment towards China, which is NATO and the U.S. empire's #1 target right now. You know, basically doing a new Cold War against China. So this is largely how the defector industry works, or how they propagate these stories, right, to such a mass scale to where almost everyone believes them. Not almost everyone, but a lot of Americans believe them. You take a story from a South Korean tabloid that doesn't have any evidence, you publish it in Newsweek, and you just kind of cover up the fact that there's no real evidence for it by saying, yeah, we don't, you know, there was nobody by the or this orchestra conductor who was killed. We looked it up, and there were no other conductors, or there were no conductors in all of Korea with that name. But we know for sure he was executed, right? There's no evidence for it, but we know for sure it happened. So they bury the truth, they bury the holes in the story, and then Yeonmi Park takes it almost like it's a game of telephone. So it went from tabloid to Western outlet Newsweek to Yeonmi Park, who gives no evidence at all, you know, and almost makes it act like, or almost seems like this is something that happened to her, something that she witnessed as a defector. Tells the story without talking about the holes in the story, without even mentioning the contradictions in the story or where the story came from, any evidence at all, and then tells you to share her video, right? So the Newsweek article probably didn't get that many views. The South Korean tabloid article probably got less, but then Yeonmi Park's video gets however many views this video has.
All I can do right now.
5.1 million. So 5.1 million people who are gobbling up this story that has no evidence. That is the purpose that celebrity defectors like Yeonmi Park serve. The distribution of fake news or misinformation, right? This misinformation was produced in South Korea, transported to the U.S. via Newsweek, and taken by Yeonmi Park and distributed to 5.1 million people on YouTube. There's one part here I want to find. She says the story almost seems unbelievable.
Kim is like always on that point. This is unbelievable. There's nothing we can do to stop this kind of inhumane public execution in North Korea.
This is unbelievable. Yes, it is, Yeonmi. We all agree with you. It is absolutely unbelievable. So that was a great case study in how this stuff works. And unfortunately, if you read the comments, there are so many people gobbling it up, and that could be influenced by bots. And I mean, the comments could be directly controlled because it's Yeonmi Park's YouTube channel. And, you have the ability to filter and delete any comments that you want. But some of the worst ones I saw, one said, I just saw Yeonmi Park in an interview, and she said that she hates when Americans say they are oppressed because she knows what real oppression is. I have tremendous respect for what you're doing, Yeonmi, and the U.S. can learn so much from you. Please keep talking. So there's someone who took away from this video, American capitalism's great. Right? Nobody's oppressed under capitalism. The people of the DPRK aren't being oppressed by Western capitalist sanctions. We just need to stop complaining and stop criticizing our government and stop criticizing our ruling class, because at least we aren't communists like North Korea. At least we aren't evil commies like them. Which is another, purpose, which is the main purpose these stories serve, is making other countries seem horrific. In relation to the U.S., quit complaining about the U.S. You could be in the DPRK while completely ignoring that the U.S. killed 20% of their population. But yeah, it encourages people not to be critical of our own system and spend all our time thinking about how we can destroy other countries that we don't even understand, using fake news stories to get people to hate those countries. So one of the other comments I read, one of the other greatest hits, said, that is insane. I can't even imagine. I have so much respect for you, for what you've seen and been through, and how despite that, you are still so open about everything that goes on there, and your efforts to spread awareness and help stop this disgusting regime. Anyway, subscribe. Yes, her efforts to destroy this disgusting regime are so selfless. She's so honorable. She's just getting on this YouTube channel and doing this despite all the hate that she doesn't receive. Because she truly cares about the people. It has nothing to do with the NGOs sponsoring her, paying her thousands of dollars. It has nothing to do with the fact that she's a celebrity defector, so making videos and doing interviews and doing speaking engagements is literally her job. It's her source of income, and it's a very lucrative source of income that's allowed her to live better at first than the vast majority of people in South Korea, and now has allowed her to live better than the majority of people in the U.S., the system that we're not allowed to complain about, according to her commenters. Has nothing to do with the financial incentives. Yeonmi is just this altruistic person who only tells the truth. Definitely not just repeating the stuff that NGOs and the think tanks who fund her tell her to repeat. What's the last one? Another comment said, I had no idea how brutal and insane life can be in North Korea. You are so very brave to speak out. Hopefully it will educate the world about this and help to make a positive change. Such cruelty is shocking. So here you see someone, saying, I had no idea life could even be like this in the DPRK. It's so shocking. I almost can't believe it. It almost seems unbelievable. And you see that a lot of people, and a lot of kids especially, get their first experience with North Korea, or the first knowledge that they get about the DPRK, comes from YouTube. It comes from YouTube defector testimonies that happen to go viral, right? So this is a country that, like I said, our country invaded and killed 20% of their population, wiped out all the buildings over 1 story tall, and then kept them under horrific economic sanctions and siege tactics ever since. But we're not taught about that. That's brushed over in the American education system. Sometimes they'll talk about Vietnam, but they always jump over the Korean War to do so. So it's not like Americans are learning the horrible stuff that we've done to this country and then learning what the DPRK is like. right? A lot of people's first experience with the DPRK is these tabloid stories. These tabloid stories told by defectors that are being propped up by Western NGOs and arms of the empire, that everybody takes as fact, or everybody who's not well versed on the issue takes as fact, out of context stories. So, this is, people wonder how Americans have such a wrong idea about the DPRK, how people's conceptions of it can be so far off from reality, or how they could get everybody to believe this. It's because a lot of, nobody's taught the history, or most people aren't taught the history. And if they are, they're told that North Korea invaded the South. They're not told the true story. They don't, the story doesn't start with the overthrowing of the Japanese colonizers either. And then they just see these defector testimonies, these tabloid stories about how evil this country is. So yeah, that's how it happens. That's how the whole population has been brainwashed about this country that our country is trying to destroy. And someone says, "I'm so sorry for what you have been through. I hope you are finally in a safe place." She is. Yeonmi is in a safe place. She left in 2007, and she's been in the U.S. since 2014. Like I said, living better than most workers by doing these defector testimonies. She's safe because she's in the country that is sanctioning her homeland and starving her people. Or there's not starvation in the North anymore, but there was in the 90s and before that. 90s after the Soviet Union collapsed and the DPRK didn't have their main trading partner anymore. So they were less able to get around the horrific U.S. sanctions. So that is why Yeonmi's safe, because she's in the country that's targeting her homeland, starving her people. She's no longer in that country being targeted by the U.S., but she's encouraging the sanctioning of her homeland and the targeting of her own people with this rhetoric, right? She's saying the U.S. needs to do more. Whoops. Threw my mouse off the table. The U.S. needs to do more about this. They need to get more involved, more sanctions. And let's target China too, because China isn't sanctioning the DPRK. They're trading with them. And trading and economic development are evil. Those are evil authoritarian things. Sanctions are how we protect human rights, even though they starve children. So even, as I said, even honest liberals don't trust Yeonmi anymore. And, most academic sources won't use defector testimonies. But there have even been articles published in liberal outlets criticizing Yeonmi, which you wouldn't think they would do. But this is how bad it's gotten, or how, blatant, glaring the contradictions in her story actually are. So this Guardian article is actually really good. And I can tell why this author published it, even though, they're a pro-British or pro-US liberal for the most part. But this is by someone who researched the DPRK and DPRK defectors for years. But in doing so, they lost all their trust in the defector testimonies. They realized, the contradictions became so glaring after doing the research that they couldn't ignore them. So they also talk about in this article U.S. sanctions that have been placed on the DPRK with the explicit justification of these defector testimonies, right? So we have to do this. We have to put these new sanctions on North Korea. Look at what this defector said. Look at the testimony that they gave. So, maybe people think I'm exaggerating when I say that Yeonmi's rhetoric encourages, more sanctions and more U.S. imperialism towards the DPRK. But defector testimonies are explicitly being used to craft U.S. policy, right? That's admitted to by the U.S. That's what they use as justification to push these things through Congress, which is something that's talked about in here. This article also talks about the cash incentives that exist for defectors. Again, a lot of this is facilitated by these brokers and facilitated by the South Korean intelligence agency, which we should all watch, Loyal Citizen to Pyongyang. As I said, the economic conditions, as I said earlier, the economic conditions in South Korea aren't great, which is how we've gotten amazing movies like Parasite and Squid Game that are highly critical of capitalism and South Korean capitalism in particular. So people are incentivized to become defectors, to get these cash incentives for telling these stories. And this article, this Guardian article, says that they can get paid up to from $50 to $500 an hour for these stories. So not saying they're all made up, but the incentive to just make up a story and make up a story that sounds way more heinous and crazy than everybody else, than every other defector, so that you can get on TV and become a celebrity like Yeonmi. That incentive is there. Why not? If you're in poverty, and you can't pay for your mom's medical bills, and you're struggling to get by every day under capitalism, and then there's this TV show that'll pay you $50 to $500 an hour to just make up a heinous story about the DPRK. Of course, there are going to be people who do that, and that's a big reason there have been 20,000 defectors since 2010 alone. Although, like the Loyal Citizens of Pyongyang story shows, or the movie shows, there's a lot of people who regret it. Right? There's a lot of people who second guess themselves. There's a lot of people who are now suing South Korea, the government and the intelligence agencies, because they defected and then weren't given what they were promised, or life under capitalism wasn't what they thought it was going to be. So this is I've learned a lot of lessons since we started Midwestern Marks, mostly how easy it is to be a grifter. How once being a political pundit or commentator, someone who talks to people, once that becomes how you make part of your income, once it becomes part of your job, how you sustain yourself and produce your means of subsistence, there's so much incentive to be a grifter. Right? There's so much incentive just to say whatever's popular, to say things that are controversial, whatever's going to bring in clicks and views. So I definitely understand the incentive that there is to be a defector and make up lies. But that's all the more reason, to take them with a grain of salt and not believe them, because of the financial incentives that exist to lie. And like I said, Yeonmi's she's got her start telling the story, whether truthful or not, or a stretch of the truth, stories from her own life, at least claiming that all of these things happened to her. But because her income is tied to telling these stories and talking bad about NK, because that's how she produces her means of subsistence, or how that's how she gets the money that she needs to survive under capitalism, she needs to find new stories, right? Eventually you'll run out of stories about your own life. And she's already been caught, mixing up her stories and contradicting herself. So since she's been out of North Korea since 2007, now she just needs to pick up other stories from other people, or pick up stories she's fed by the NGOs who sponsor her. So she needs to constantly come up with new stuff if she's going to survive, if she's going to make an income. So that's just how the structure of capitalism, the capitalist system itself, forces a lot of people into this situation, forces a lot of defectors into this situation, or offers them money to lie about the DPRK. So there have been a few other good articles, quote unquote liberal articles or Western media articles, debunking Yeonmi. There's a couple of good ones from The Diplomat that people can check out if they want. So I'm just showing you this to show you that it's not just me. This ain't just me being a crazy tanky. All you have to do is a little bit of research on this stuff, and you'll find even liberal sources criticizing her for mixing up and contradicting the story about her mom and stuff like that. The Strange Tale of Yeonmi Park, a high-profile North Korean defector, has harrowing stories to tell. But are they true? North Korean defectors and their skeptics. Some skeptics are publicly doubting the horrific stories being told by North Korean defectors. So this has even become a thing in Western media, where you're not allowed to question that the DPRK is this authoritarian dictatorship where Kim Jong-un kills all your puppies. So this writer actually, this one, I can't remember which one, but they met with Yeonmi before they published this critical piece. So they actually met with her and talked to her, but that didn't help their trust at all. they still detail all the inconsistencies in her stories, and the way they do so is referencing earlier episodes of that South Korean TV show, Now on My Way Coming to See You. So there are episodes when Yeonmi was living in South Korea from, I want to say, from 2009 to 2014, where she was on this TV show where all they do is tell horror stories from the DPRK, and they have defectors fed to them by South Korean intelligence, so that they can blast these stories about the DPRK across the airwaves. But there are inconsistencies between what Yeonmi said on that show and then what she said when she came to the U.S., right? And she was targeting a different market, talking to a different audience. So it makes sense that her story would change, based on the audience she's talking to, if, this is mostly an act and if the stories are a stretch of the truth or not truthful. So the stories constantly change. Her dad's imprisonment, the way she talks about that constantly changes. Her mom's imprisonment, the reason why they were arrested, how long they were arrested, how they were treated. One of the more blatant ones people have pointed out is she says that she crossed mountains, like 3 mountains a day, to escape the north, but there are no mountains at all surrounding the place that she lived. And based on the path that she said she followed to leave, there are no mountains on that pass. She said that her mom's execution, or her mom was executed in a stadium. And this has been debunked by a lot of sources on the ground, and Western liberal sources who study the DPRK. So I don't know where Yeonmi came up with the stadium execution. She must have been thinking of Augusto Pinochet, the U.S.-backed dictator in Chile who executed 20,000 socialists in a stadium. You never hear about that in Western media, though. Apparently, Pinochet's a dictator who's all right because he was pro-U.S. The only dictators the U.S. Doesn't like are ones who go against the U.S.'s economic interests. These are just the most blatant lies that you'll find in every Western media source that I'm listing now. But Yeonmi said that they ate grass to survive. I don't even know if you can get nutrients in grass or if that's even possible. But her mom literally said that's not true. They were never so poor that they had to eat grass, although things did get tough in the 90s when, like I said, the Soviet Union collapsed and the DPRK couldn't trade with the rest of the world anymore. But that's because of the U.S. sanctions. That's because of the U.S. sanction regime and the fact that the U.S. destroyed their infrastructure with bombs 40 years prior. So Yeonmi herself is from a pretty rich family. She's even been called the Paris Hilton of North Korea. She said multiple times that her father would criticize the Kim family all the time and blame all the problems in the country on the Kim family, which is funny that she says her father would do that, even though she says also everybody's getting spied upon. You're never allowed to criticize the Kim family. But she says that the masses would never agree with her father criticizing the Kim family. Most of them would disagree with her dad. And you could say that all the masses are brainwashed. All the masses, are just being controlled by Kim Jong-un. And that's why they won't criticize their country and their system. Or we can look at the class character of this. So Yeonmi's from a wealthy, rich family in the DPRK during a time when they're trying to construct socialism, trying to build a socialist society, and class struggle is ongoing. It makes sense that a wealthy capitalist would hate that socialist construction. Any capitalist would hate a system that they're not dominating, that they're not in control of, that doesn't work for the accumulation of their own wealth, but works for common prosperity, especially if they were a wealthy capitalist before. And it makes sense that the masses would disagree with that capitalist. We don't really care if you don't like our socialist construction, right? Of course you don't like our socialist construction. It goes against your own individual interests, but we're trying to create a society that works for the masses, not just for the capitalist class. So you also have this class character where Yeonmi was raised in a wealthier family who likely lost status, wealth, and power because of the socialist revolution. And their opinions about the system were likely rejected by most of the masses who support their system. So there's a liberal scholar who studies the DPRK who said executions only usually happen for large political crimes or human trafficking. So he denied that this execution of Yeonmi's mom would have happened because Yeonmi claimed that her mom was killed for like watching a TV show or something. That was one of her claims. Like I said, the story always changes, but North Korean scholars, even, non-communist scholars, have debunked that and said, really, people are only executed for, like treason, huge political crimes, spying, or human trafficking. So sorry, Andrew Tate. Don't go to North Korea. So her mom said once, I'm just picking out all the most interesting stuff from these two articles. Her mom said once that Yeonmi wasn't even aware of the atrocities in the DPRK until she started working for the TV show, Now on My Way Coming to See You, or whatever it's called. And at this point, she became more aware of all the atrocities going on. So isn't that an interesting way to say it? Once Yeonmi started working for this TV show that's overseen by Western NGOs and South Korean intelligence, then she became aware of the atrocities in North Korea and started talking about them. But I thought all these atrocities just came from her own experience, right? I thought this was what she witnessed and she was just talking about them on this TV show. How did she only become aware of all the atrocities in the dictatorship once she started working for this pro-Western imperialist TV show? So yeah, lots of interesting stuff in that article. That article also details where Yeonmi's direct funding comes from. So we were talking about the NGO industrial complex earlier that basically starts doing imperialism and imperialist propaganda like that. As soon as a socialist or democratic government comes to power in a country the U.S. is trying to exploit. But she works directly for the NGO Liberty North Korea. Oh, no, sorry. That was one of the old NGOs that she worked for and one of the NGOs that often funds her speaking engagements. So recently she gave a talk, a well-paid speech for Liberty North Korea. But today she works for a libertarian organization called the Atlas Foundation. Right? So once she started working for these NGOs in the NGO industrial complex and the corporate media, she became aware of the atrocities in North Korea. But she wasn't aware of them before, even though she lived there and apparently lived through these atrocities? Seems a little sketchy. I would be willing to bet Liberty North Korea and Atlas Foundation, these Western NGOs, had something to do with Yeonmi's opinions about the DPRK changing. The article also mentions a libertarian radio that she gave a talk to when she was in San Francisco. She also worked for another libertarian organization in South Korea when she was still there called the Freedom Factory. So that would have been actually the NGO who she started working for right away after she left North Korea and then after she left China in 2009. And when her mom said she became aware of the atrocities in North Korea that she supposedly lived through, that's when she started working with the Freedom Factory. So I'm sure this libertarian think tank called the Freedom Factory would never lie or, never influence the media or do propaganda, but seems a little bit sketchy. And now she started her own organization in New York that you can all donate to via PayPal. So if you want to support Yeonmi and what she's doing, you can give her your own hard-earned money too. And this article, the Diplomat articles, say that these lies are dangerous. And the reason they're publishing this article is because the lies can skew public perception of real defectors. Right. So there are real defectors who leave and talk about the atrocities of the DPRK. And if you have fake defectors like Yeonmi Park who have contradictions in their stories, this is harmful to the stories of real defectors. But the real reason it's dangerous, the real reason these defectors are propped up and, so much money is spent by these NGOs and think tanks to prop them up is because they're used to justify U.S. sanctions and murderous regime change efforts. As I said earlier, Congress literally put new sanctions on the DPRK with the explicit justification for them being some defector testimonies that were later proven false, that were later proven to be completely untrue, even by Western sources. So Congress and U.S. policy, or Congress will craft U.S. policy based on defector testimonies, or, they'll really craft policy based on their own economic interests or the economic interests of their donors. But they'll justify them with these defector testimonies. And these defector testimonies get US citizens to support sanctions and all of these horrible things, which are actually leading to human rights abuses in the DPRK, which are actually decreasing the, standard of human rights and the standard of living in the DPRK. So the propaganda blames every bad thing in the country on Kim Jong-un while never talking about sanctions and US involvement, while at the same time playing the double function of getting Americans to want more sanctions on the DPRK, weaponizing their compassion. I care so much about the DPRK that I think we should surround them with our military and make sure they're not allowed to trade. Like, it sounds pretty contradictory when you say it out loud, but that's what the majority of this country believes because of this nonsensical propaganda and the way it's designed. So this is why, like I said, these NGOs do this. This is why they spend so much money on this. This is why there are so many brokers in South Korea and China, who obviously these brokers probably in China, there's probably been an effort to get rid of these brokers, but this is why there's so many people who try and lure defectors over the border, offer them money, so that they can become successful celebrity defectors, just like Yeonmi. And, earlier I said that no academics, or at least serious academics, take these defector stories serious. But there is one remaining academic who, either hasn't done the research on Yeonmi and the contradictions in her stories and, how these defector testimonies are propagated, or they just don't care. The only remaining academic who takes South Korean defector testimony seriously, Jordan Peterson, who interviewed Yeonmi uncritically with zero pushback, with zero prior research, into potential lies or contradictions in Yeonmi's story. Peterson, the great academic that he is, the one remaining academic who takes defectors seriously, he just let her come on his podcast and say whatever she wanted and then believed it hook, line, and sinker 100%. Just dropping by to say heart and solidarity. Keep up the great work. Thank you so much, Molly. Thank you so much for that super chat. Really appreciate it. We will keep up the great work. Sorry if I missed any super chats while I've been doing this segment. I've been, my head's been in the game. But either way, here's Yeonmi Park telling the horrors of the DPRK on the podcast of the wise and powerful Jordan Peterson.
And then they closing it back, and then it literally from our hospital to the bathroom, there were like piles of human bodies piled up, and you see children like chasing the rats, eating human eyes first, and then children catch these rats and they somehow die from, I don't know what it is. Then rats eat the children back. So this cycle of us eating rats and they eat us back is going to continue.
Yeah, and you said that was happening in the hospital. You also mentioned it.
Gosh, he's smart. That's definitely happening in every North Korean hospital. There's bodies piled up to the ceiling. They never get rid of them for some reason. And, nobody ever complains about the smell either, I guess. And the rats are eating people, and then people in the hospital eat the rats. That's the North Korean hospital diet. And you might be saying, how's that even possible? That doesn't even make sense that there would be bodies piled up in the hospital or that, it's possible for rats to eat people and then people eat the rats. It doesn't even make sense at all. But Jordan Peterson doesn't seem skeptical at all. He's a really smart guy, and he doesn't see any problem with this story. He just goes, yep, that sounds right. In the hospitals. So I'm going to believe this story too, because he's the greatest, wisest public academic of our time. And he thought this story was true without researching it at all or being critical of it at all. So thank goodness there's one good academic left who takes serious these defector testimonies. Thank you, JP. Another great stream, Eddie. Well done. Kai Pai. Thank you, Tom. Really appreciate that. Thank you so much to our New Zealand comrade, Tom, for the super chat. So somebody said Yeonmi Park was on the Joe Rogan podcast. Also true. She was on the Joe Rogan podcast spreading nonsense, the most popular podcast in the country. And obviously Joe Rogan isn't skeptical of her claims. It's freaking Joe Rogan. I like watching Joe Rogan shows sometimes, but he's far from being an academic and he's a meathead. And he'll just like kind of excitedly believe anything he hears that sounds interesting. But I just thought this one was better, the Jordan Peterson podcast, because like I said, no academics or no scholars have taken defector testimony serious for a long time because they understand where they come from. But here you have Jordan Peterson just like, yep, this is all true. Yeah, this is all true. Here, keep it coming. Keep it coming. I'm not going to do any background research on this or be critical at all. And it just shows how much of a fraud Peterson is from an academic perspective. I mean, that was revealed in the Zizek debate for sure, when he didn't understand what Marxism was at all. Despite all his claims that Marxism's evil and he debunked Marxism. Pretty much, he probably just read the Communist Manifesto, which is like 30 pages, and called it a day. But I thought this was another great example of how much of a fraud Peterson is, right? And how any, academic or well-researched criticism against him can just blow a lot of his arguments apart. So there was a tweet that kind of went viral for like tanky Twitter, I guess, from Radio Free Amanda, who's great. Everyone follow Radio Free Amanda. She has good YouTube videos too. She said, still laughing about North Korean defector Yeonmi Park on Jordan Peterson's show, claiming children there resort to eating rats, then die from eating rats, then the rats eat their carcasses, thus continuing a never-ending cycle of rats and children eating each other. American propaganda has no chill. Right? Like, this is the kind of lie that Jordan Peterson's propagating. Like, I feel like if I said this at like in a middle school cafeteria in the United States, if I said, at the hospitals in the DPRK, the children eat rats, then die of some unknown disease from eating the rats, and then the rats eat them, and it's a never-ending cycle of rats eating people, I feel like those middle schoolers would be like, that doesn't sound real. That doesn't sound true. Who told you this? And have you investigated their claims? But, Jordan Peterson's podcast is not even close to the level of a middle school cafeteria. So we couldn't expect that from him. The greatest and wisest public academic that capitalism has produced. Like, it's not just that Peterson failed to research Yeonmi Park and the contradictions in her story that have been proven. It's like he doesn't even have common sense, right? You don't even need to research Yeonmi and all the holes in her story and all the criticisms against her to know that this story isn't true. Just use common sense. Like, there's no reason that anybody around the world, regardless of whether they're in North Korea or not, would leave, giant piles of rotting carcasses in their hospitals, right? They would at least take them and put them somewhere. And it's physically impossible for, humans to live off a diet of rats while rats also live off a diet of humans. I don't even know why I need to say that, but that's the point we're at with imperialist propaganda and with the capitalist academy, where we have these public intellectuals who will gobble up imperialist propaganda, no matter how ridiculous it sounds, no matter how much it contradicts, what common sense would tell you. So it's hard to explain how much of a joke Jordan Peterson is from like an academic perspective, but he is just the laziest public intellectual ever. And I'm sure at this point, as I said with Yeonmi, I'm sure he's tied to his public profile. His public profile, putting out these videos and doing these speaking engagements, especially since he left his job, is how he makes his money. Right? So he's less of an intellectual at this point, less of someone who does research and looks into these things, and more someone who's like, oh, I'll have Yeonmi Park on my podcast. It'll get 2 million views when she talks about the never-ending cycle of rat eating that she made up, or that the NGOs who sponsor her made up. She also says during this Peterson interview, I believe, that she woke up during surgery once. So she was getting surgery, and she admits that the surgery and the healthcare is free in North Korea, which is hilarious. And wouldn't that be nice for Americans, where 60% of our country experiences medical debt? You know, that's not a dictatorship, though. That's not a dictatorship of the hospital systems and the pharmaceutical corporations who steal your wealth. No. North Korea is a dictatorship because their people get free healthcare, and they're in charge of the health. The masses are in charge of the healthcare system. So she tells a story about how she woke up from surgery, and then like somehow blames that on Kim Jong-un. Like, so you were getting free surgery, and then you woke up in the middle of it, and that's Kim Jong-un's fault, and that's a example of how much of a dictatorship this country is. And I mean, maybe that happened, and maybe it's because they had, didn't have anesthesia or the correct medicine to put her to sleep during surgery. But the U.S. sanctions on North Korea, Cuba, Venezuela, Iran, all these countries have been proven to prevent them from that. It's been proven that the sanctions prevent these countries from getting sufficient medical supplies, and that this leads to death. In the death of children, in the death of people who are reliant on certain medical procedures in order to live. So again, even if that story is true about the anesthesia, you should be advocating against U.S. sanctions that prevent this country from getting sufficient medical supplies while trying to provide free healthcare to their people. But instead, Yeonmi and Peterson and all these goofballs are justifying more U.S. sanctions, calling for more U.S. sanctions, calling for another U.S. intervention at points. So it's just so inverted. It's such an inversion of reality. Yeah, that's all I got to say about that long segment about Yeonmi Park that I may even split into two videos for YouTube. But I want to end this segment just by showing you all my favorite DPRK sources. If you check out all of these sources and read them / watch them, you will have a much better understanding of the country and the U.S. lies about the country and how these lies are propagated, perpetrated, spread across the country. Blasted over the airwaves by the imperialists.
Respond to his criticisms
the
of my
DPRK
TikToks.
is evil.
Let's do it.
You've seen this weak takedown to your April Fool's joke? Wait, did somebody try to?
Oh no, I accidentally opened a Voosh video, because my debunking of Voosh is one of the sources that I have. But shoot, what did I do? Now I messed up. Oh no, I think I just closed out of all my sources. Dang it. I gotta open them again. How did I do that? Darn it, Smith. Okay, so the first one that you should watch or read actually is The Korean War by Hugh Dean. Now this is a whole book, right? There's a whole book called The Korean War that you should read, but Martin Hart Landsberg, an author for Monthly Review, which is a great independent socialist magazine that hopefully you all check out. We republish them all the time. Or republish stuff that they publish all the time. Martin Hart Landsberg did basically a summary of the book, or a book review that goes over most of the important points in Hugh Dean's Korean War book. And Hugh Dean was a journalist who was in Korea during the time of the Korean War, and he debunks this idea that the North invaded the South. This idea that the North started the war, and he shows that the U.S. were really the aggressors from the jump. Sorry, my other videos started playing that I had pulled up. So if you don't want to read the whole book, The Korean War by Hugh Dean, but you want to understand the war, just go ahead and read this. Go ahead and read the Monthly Review article from Martin Hart Landsberg. Now, if you watch anything today, I think it should be this. If you're an American, surrounded by all this propaganda about the DPRK, and you want to understand how that propaganda, comes to be and how our people have become so brainwashed on this issue, this is the best thing you can watch. The Loyal Citizens of Pyongyang and Seoul. This isn't the best for knowing the history of the DPRK, although they do go into that. or knowing the history of the Korean War, although they do go into that. But this is the best for understanding South Korean intelligence. That TV show, Now on My Way, Coming to See You, or whatever it's called, where they have South Korean defectors, the NGOs that prop up Yeonmi Park, the defectors who are now challenging the system. This is a great movie for learning about that and from hearing from people involved with that. This is a good one if you like me. It's called Why Am I a Tanky? Why Vaush is chauvinistic towards the DPRK. I mean, it's a Vaush response, but I turned a lot of Vaush followers and supporters into Marxist-Leninists with this video, because I used Domenico Lacerdo's tree diagram to explain why socialists in the U.S. should support Korea's economic right to well-being and their sovereignty, whereas Vaush's support sanctioning and destroying this country and propping up a fascist dictatorship. He openly supports that at one point. So this is a good video for understanding how far support for the DPRK should extend, and why socialists extend support to the DPRK, even though it's extremely unpopular in the current landscape, although it's becoming more popular as more people are seeing through the lies of the empire. This is a good one called Daily Life in North Korea, My Brothers and Sisters in the North, a full documentary that just goes through what life is like for various people in North Korea. Here there's kids going to school she talks to. Here there's an artist. There's one point where she talks to like a water park worker in Pyongyang, visits these people in like a clothing factory, and just shows what their daily life is like and how it contrasts to the U.S. So that's a good one for knowing what everyday life is like. Not a highly political movie, although it is because of what most Americans think about the DPRK. But really, it's just showing what their life is like and just treating them with respect, as the U.S. never does. Another really good one, Dispelling Myths About North Korea, from this Rutgers professor. You can just look up Rutgers professor myths about North Korea. In this one, she just debunks a lot of the major myths, shows how they're false, shows where they came from. One of my favorite DPRK videos or lectures in existence. So yeah, check out all those if you want to know more. I think I've said all I can say about old Yeonmi and what her grift is, and how it's backed up by arms of finance capital and arms of imperialism and the South Korean ruling class and South Korean arms of imperialism, which are really arms of Western finance capital imperialism. But yeah, there you go. Now you have some more sources to take your research further beyond me, even though one of the sources I gave you was from me. Random side note, did you see that doctor on TikTok that agreed to your Cuba healthcare system is better than ours? I didn't. Someone told me about it earlier, and I was hoping to see it. Or I was hoping someone could send me the link. I got to end this show here pretty soon because I got practice coming up. But I would love if somebody could send me that so I can see it. Hey, buddy, I frequently check out your streams. Would love to hear your review or critique of the film Parasite. All right. So Carlos and I have been saying we need to do more movie reviews because you guys like them. There's so much imperialist propaganda in entertainment media, and there's so much anti-capitalist sentiment in entertainment media that people don't always pick up on. So we got to do more of these movie reviews. Just because of how well they do, how much you guys like them, and how important they are, or how important they can be, how we can turn, movie reviews, which don't seem important, into, arguing something that is important or information that is important. So I should definitely do Parasite, and then I should definitely do a TV show review of Squid Game, because I've seen both those. More proof North Korean music slaps hard. Thank you. The movie slaps so hard. Had to get your thoughts. I love that movie. Yeah. I mean, every South Korean movie is basically forced by the government and the intelligence agencies and the movie studios that, like I said, have been overseen and developed by the U.S. for years. They're basically forced to throw shade at the North, right? They're basically forced to make fun of the North at one point in the movie, at least. So it's like, you're criticizing capitalism, that's fine, but, you know, no saying that the alternative is good. You know, you can't advocate for socialism, communism, or existing socialist countries. So like in Parasite, there's the scene where they're making fun of North Korean news anchors. In Squid Game, you have the North Korean defector character. So that's where that comes from. But I'll definitely talk about it. Found it. You found the video of the doctor. Can you send it to me so I can watch it before we log off, before I go kick some butt at wrestling? I wanted to talk about the Grundrisse today because I read the Grundrisse a little bit, but that'll take a bit, and it'll take a bit of brain power. So I will save that for next time and maybe read more of the Grundrisse so I can get deeper into it. Yep, I remember that part in Parasite where the housekeeper makes fun of NK News. Yep, that's what that is. That's them being forced to throw some shade at the DPRK if they want to make an anti-capitalist movie. Which in Parasite, it really kind of feels out of place. And it's like, where did this come from? Or like, why is this in here other than to, you know, throw shade at the DPRK randomly in the form of a joke? But bye, everyone. I wanted to pull up that video of the doctor, but it doesn't look like anyone's sending the link. So I might just call it a day. But thank you all very much for being here. Solidarity. Thank you to everyone who sent super chats. The Journal of American Socialist Studies 2 is on the way. I finished my article for it today completely, or yesterday. Carlos is now compiling everything. The artwork is done. So the next journal is coming. One sec. Let me grab the... I don't want to mess up my whole setup up there, but that's the Journal of American Socialist Studies 1. Really cool print journal that we're really proud of. So yeah, we're really excited to do the second one, and all of that would be impossible without our Patreon supporters. Oh, we gained some Patreon supporters since I last checked, but yeah, all of this is paid for by you guys, which is why we try and invest all the money, as much of the money as we can, you know, invest in the project and not take for ourselves to survive. We do. So this is the best way to support us on Patreon. Most of the money goes towards furthering our project. TikTok obviously kicked us out of the Creator Fund recently. Twitch has been glitching out today, so our income sources are always up in the air. You know, we never know how long they're going to last, or, you know, if we'll get banned and when we'll have to restart on a certain platform. So this is the only thing that we can really rely on, right? This is the only income that we get straight from the people that we know is going to be there every month, that comes from you guys who aren't just going to ban us one day or abandon us. So yeah, if you want to support the project, there you go. And there's my little pitch for Patreon. Have a great day, everyone. Enjoy your time at work. Organize your community. Organize your workplace. Solidarity.